All men are created equal is the topic for this morning. They had gathered in Philadelphia. Most of us know the sketchy outline. One of my favorite musicals of all time was 1776. It must have hit me at the right time, or the music was good, or it touched the historical interest that I have and have always have. Let me read what they finally came up with and they voted on that day, a part of it, to get us started in our discussion. It was July the 4th. The motion had been made July 2nd to declare independence from Great Britain. The committee had been charged beforehand to write up the document. Jefferson of Virginia, Adams of Massachusetts, Franklin of Pennsylvania, Sherman of Connecticut, Livingston of New York. The heavy lifting went to Jefferson on Adams' suggestion. Franklin put his pieces, and Sherman and Livingston sort of let the guys go on, carry on. So they had the document ready after some revisions for that July 4th to hear the proclamation. They didn't call it a Declaration of Independence, they just called it their statement. And Jefferson was given the charge of writing it. This is what he came up with after the alterations from others. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. And it goes on to say more, to speak to the details, to be really a legal document in a way, to say this is why we're doing this, and this is the reason we're doing this. You might come to understand the Declaration of Independence as the why of the American Revolution, the why of America. The Constitution would come later, in about a dozen years, and it would be the how of it. The Declaration of Independence, together with the Bill of Rights, become the Holy Scripture of our nation. Abraham Lincoln used the Bill of Rights to mold and guide his understanding, his changing understanding of the concepts of this country, as he engaged the issue of slavery. When the document was written and it finally got to Britain, the Declaration of Independence, one of the leading abolitionists for the ending of slavery scoffed at it. And he said, Jefferson, one hand a pen to write this drivel, and the other hand a whip as a slave master. So as it came out of the box, it was seen by the larger world as rank hypocrisy, because it spoke of an ideal that was not real. It spoke of an image that was yet to be focused. The world hadn't seen anything like that document it was describing, and it wouldn't see it. Until this day, it has not seen it. It has seen approximations of it. It has seen a concept out there on the horizon that has guided people to make for a more perfect union. A country, a culture, a society that holds up principles of equality. What did that look like in 1776? It looked like landed white males. You talk about 1% of the population. They may have been 10% of the population back then. But that's who they were speaking from. And they weren't speaking for my ancestors because they didn't fit that description. And they weren't speaking for the ancestors of black men. They weren't speaking for ancestors of black women. They were not speaking for the ancestors of women. The limited concept that Jefferson spoke to, that our country celebrated its 239th anniversary of yesterday, was a hope put on paper to guide a people. And look what they did. Look what they did. In the hypocrisy of the life around them, they saw the hope. And they gave themselves to that hope. Now, I'm not flag-waving this morning. I'm not being a super patriot. I just want to for you to look at the facts of what happened. George Washington was the richest man in America because he married well. He did. Martha had it all, let me tell you. She had inherited a state that would, make most people look very well. John Hancock, the folks in Massachusetts, without trade, without the commerce that the British Navy protected them for, they had nothing. They truly did gamble all. And they gambled it on a possibility. And those of you who know a little bit about the American Revolution, George Washington really never won a battle. He just didn't lose his army. Now, how do you win a war without winning a battle? You win it because your moral center is solid. Your compass is true. And you direct your vision to what can be. And the guys kept going home, coming back, trying again. And the diplomats around the world conspired with other hypocrites, like the French, to get the French Navy to lay off Virginia, to keep the British Navy away, so they couldn't resupply the British Army. And somehow Washington and that ragtag group and those scoundrels in Philadelphia, traitors true and true, wore out the greatest empire in the world. And they just let us go. They let us go. So the Declaration of Independence is a hope written on a possibility. It's like, I think Lincoln said it, maybe Dr. King said it, it's a check that's yet to be redeemed. It's a check written on the blood of our ancestors who held high the ideal and hope of a more perfect union. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There are three outlined. But there's also among these, what are the others? You ever wondered about those? What's the theme here? Equality, right? Possibility, freedom, independence of personality. What could be the other truths that are not alluded to? Life, okay. We got a chance to live. Liberty, we can make some choices within a social contract. Within a social contract. Brought together by our representatives. Outlined in the Bill of Rights. Prescribed in the Constitution. Defined by the courts. Enacted by our representatives in the legislature. All of that goes as a complete package. It doesn't just come and this is the way it is. You have your liberty. We were at the parade yesterday, and I saw a troublemaker coming down the line, and I was watching the parade in Temple Terrace, and he's my age, and he's my class, and he's the same guys I've hated since I was 13 and didn't know what to do with. And he's going, you better say, this is Freedom Day, you better remember your freedoms, they're going to take them away. And I went, oh. You're not talking about your freedom taken away. You're talking about the freedom of others being taken away that embarrasses you because your heart and your humanity is not big enough to stretch that see that other person has a possibility and a potential and a life as well as yours. And as long as they're not stealing from you, you have nothing to say about them. Unless they're cheating you, unless they're hurting you, you have nothing to say about their lifestyle. So do talk about your liberties being taken away. You're talking about your freedom to take somebody else's liberties away. It's what you're talking about, sir. But then that's not, I don't love him then, and that's all my problem, and I have to go home. So here we are, 2 weeks after the Supreme Court, by a count of 5-4, said to Mr. Jefferson and said to the hypocrites in hot Philadelphia, we're going to put a little bit more in the bank. We're going to take a little bit more out of the bank. We're going to redeem that check for another class of people. We're going to say to lesbians, gays, bisexual, transsexual, anybody who's not heterosexual, I've figured out how to do that, that you're as free and as equal as I am. And you are free to love who you need to love, and you're free to be married to that person. You're free to declare that, and we will protect that as a right prescribed by our founding fathers, only men, who had no concept of seeing that 239 years ago. But see, that's okay, because they set the mark out on the horizon. And they said, let's get to that point. Let's get to that place. Let's say to the world that we can be a strong people. We can be a loving people. We can be a cooperative people where all the people have a place at the table. That all the people can be a part of this beauty of a bouquet that we have. That the quilt can hold with a variety of colors and shapes and patterns. That's all about sex. Damn it. Between God and sex, people can make a lot of money. Think about that. Theology and sexuality. You work those two angles, man, you got to live in the rest of your life. You can become a great theologian to tell you God's mind, or you will be a pornographer making sure that our habits and our appetites are served. Because it's still the great mystery. The great mystery. And none of us are comfortable with it. We all struggle to be sexual beings and what that means. But that's not what we're talking about here. So let's get away from that just a little bit. Let's get away from that bias just a little bit. We're talking about an identity that you have inside of yourself and what you feel about yourself. I can only imagine as a heterosexual male, white, I got the good draw. Come on. All of us are just sparks of consciousness, being endowed in a body, being able to live a while. Okay, I got the lottery. Okay, I did well. I can just imagine how hard it must be for someone who doesn't get that privileged position, heterosexual, white male, to be happy with themselves, to be okay with themselves. Because I've had a hell of a long time, and I'm not there yet being happy with myself. Now work this just a little bit. We're saying as human beings, in our bigotry and our put down of those different from us, we're going to dislike you just because of who you are, because what life has given you. Now that is wrong, that is wrong, that is wrong. And don't bring me up some old scripture from some old ancient people who stoned folks who looked different, who had polygamy as a practice, who had real slavery. Don't bring that into my life to say this is authoritative. This is what the good book says. And I says, what do your daughter and son say to you? What does that grandson and that granddaughter that says to you, Dad, Granddad, I'm gay. Can you still love me? Don't you bring no laws out of those some ancient times to me. You follow the rule that only applies to life, and that is the rule of love, and say, come here. You are of life, you are unique, you are special. It's going to be tough, and I'm standing with you. I'm standing with the possibilities. I'm standing with the promise. It's like something new has been discovered. It's like something... I had a friend of mine tell me the other day, when I get all agitated in my struggles with what's going on in the world, he says, paradigm shifts are tough. Can you imagine? Have you taken in what happened 2 weeks ago? The Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, followed by a bloody war, verified by the abolition of slavery, by the constitutional amendments, and now the Supreme Court's decision on freedom of marriage equality. That's big stuff, guys. That is monumental, big stuff. It says we have moved as a culture. Oh yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be friction. We're going to see the crazies, and we're going to see the demagogues, and we're going to see what they are for what they are. Because basically they are fighting a defensive posture. They're on the ropes. 10,000 Protestant ministers are going to be arrested because they won't marry gay people. Where in the hell did that come from? I turn people down all the time that I don't feel right about doing an order of service. No minister in this country, no official in this country has to marry anyone. You go to the courthouse, you get a legal document, says you're free to go find someone to officiate at your wedding. Separation of church and state, don't want to go there right now, but it is important. What we have found in this country is a document that said 239 years ago, this is what we might become. Are we able? Can we get there? Slavery, women's rights, we can go through with them. And it's what's happened. Imagine a spiral that I love so much. Imagine a spiral. We started at a point in 1776 in Philadelphia. And the spiral just kept turning and it kept broadening and it kept getting bigger and it kept going and it kept going. And it included and embraced and was broadened by new freedoms, by new possibilities of including those people that didn't have property to vote, that were people of color. Native Americans didn't get the right to vote in 1924. Think about that. We have always been a work in progress in this country. We've always been a work in progress that has tensions and conflicts. And there are agents and there are dreamers. And there are those who see love and possibility and family and community as where we want to go. And we don't want little tribes, and we don't want little warlords, and we don't want little isms separating us from one another, because in that is poverty. That's poverty of spirit, that's poverty of possibility. Because everybody has something to contribute to the good and the health and the happiness of us all. And that's what government's instituted for. And that's what we make possible by representative government. And that's what we make possible by laws that stand the test of time, that said, you are important. This country was based on that. We were a light to the world. And we are still a light to the world because those possibilities are still there. And there are 5 people out of 9 sitting in a room that's so out of touch they wouldn't know how to use a pump or a gas pump. They wouldn't use that. They don't know what's going on in the day-to-day world of us. But 5 out of 9 of them made the right choice. And they made the right choice in a beautiful way. Kennedy's statement was grand, and someone said that he should give him a preacher's license. He's right good. So that's my thing today. All men are created equal. All people are created equal. It is left up to us in our culture, in our choices, in our future, in how we craft the possibilities of our lives to make it real for more and more people. Go in peace and love. May the hope that was prescribed in 1776 about the notion of a nation also speak to us today, spiritually, religiously, give meaning to the possibilities that lay there in the future. And it is in truth that we are recovering hypocrites, us all. All of us are complicit. All of us are complicit in the richness of this world, made not by our hands and not by goodness, but too often by greed. But if we have that awareness, if we have that insight, then we may discern what's possible. To understand that we can move beyond those limits, to embrace the idealism to make more real in our lives. They killed Dr. King. They killed the folks at Stonewall. They killed Harvey Milk. They're killing all the time. The forces of reaction will not go easy. Frederick Douglass said it's tough, and it takes struggle, and it takes conflict. So let us be good to one another as we strive in our peaceful ways to stay true to the course of what can be and what love can look like in a community and a world, and justice be made possible. Take the light with you. Go in love and peace. Light good fires. Fight the good fight.